Wanna touchdown in your end zone. You got a reputation in the streets, saying so fine but a cold heart.
All right, welcome to the Slant podcast. Firstly, welcome to the co-host Adam here. Firstly, Adam, how's your matchup going this week or going?
It's going to go down to the wire. I'm playing Tom Day, who was the winner of the one last year, actually, and he's got a bit of a rip of a team. I'm up, I think, 19 or 20 points, and he's got Godwin and Jones to come, so probably in his favour. And I need a bit of a dud week from one of them to go through. That last Patrick Mahomes touchdown broke me.
Does that matchup decide who gets a 2 seed or a 1 seed?
At the moment, it does, because I think Brendan, who's number one, lost this week. And so if I win, I'll take the number one spot. And if Tom wins, I think Tom will leapfrog both of us and push me down to third. So it's a big matchup.
Oh, big. Speaking of Tom was the guy that if any of you watched the podcast on Sunday, he was the guest that we had on that day. And the Brendan here that we talked about losing. Brendan lost to yours truly, myself, this week. But again, I can't win a game without getting a guy hurt. So Julio, rest up, please, and come back ASAP. We'll start off with a review of our waivers last week. So a few of the guys we made a push for, one of them was Tim Patrick, more or less because of his upcoming schedule. Tim played Miami this week, went for 119 yards and 14.4 points. So bit of a good call there. We also suggested maybe sneaky pick up AJ Green because of his favourable upcoming schedule. He scored his first TD of the year and banged in 12.1 points. So I picked him up before game day just to sit on my bench and see how we go. And now with a few injuries, I might have to end up playing him. So he's a sneaky watch. We also just suggested Logan Thomas. 5 targets, which is more than enough tight end, but only turned that into 1.8 points. So bit of a dust call there. In terms of our streamers, we went our QB people we kind of talked about was Cam Newton with 19.2 points against Houston. Big Ben, he played Jacksonville, scored 17.18, and then Kirk Cousins against Dallas, who scored 22. So all good calls there for streamers. I mean, they're not going to lose you the game. They're probably not going to win you it, but they'll keep you in it for a long time. Running back, Miller, hopefully you dropped him kind of at the end of the game. And then P. Ryan, 9.3 points. It is what it is. Adam Gase just won't sit Frank Gore. So pretty dust there. And then our wide receivers were Tim Patrick, as mentioned before, and our tight end was Logan Thomas, who's pretty shit. So that's our roundup from our last week's waivers episode, which brings us into our injuries. This week there was just so many injuries in terms of like quarterback. Most of them aren't season ending, but there are ones you kind of want to monitor. Started off with Kyler. He had an AC sprain in his shoulder. They played Friday, so they have a longer turnaround, but yeah, just monitor it. They reckon he'd be good to go. I reckon he'd be good to go with a bit of antibiotics and stuff and then punch on. So, but yeah, if you are a Kyle owner, just be aware that might be a bit touch and go. Mahomes looked pretty dusty this week. I didn't really watch the primetime game. I was, busy just upholding New Zealand's economy, working hard. So Mahomes looked, in what I saw, like he might have been limping. No idea what it was. Didn't look too serious, but yeah, something to monitor if you own him. Teddy Bridgewater, they sat him this week. Man, they got away with one there. They absolutely pumped the Lions, and if you'd have told them they would have won by that score without playing Teddy Bridgewater, they would have said that they were sitting him on last Monday. So they reckon he'll be good to go this week, and they reckon he chained the house down. So they got away with one there, and they might play him this week. Stafford, toughest quarterback in the league, just will not sit down. Had a thumb injury and just kept on soldiering on. They put up an absolute dud. He said that they just weren't good enough, and I mean, yeah, he's just going to battle away. And until they say that he's out, you just got to kind of tread carefully there. The big one was Rookie of the Year, Joey B, tearing his ACL.
Hurts, man.
Man, like, it's just so frustrating because everyone said all year, once he has an O-line, they are going to be so good. And the problem was that everyone was like, all right, well, they're just going to go sign one in the offseason and then go draft all the O-line guys and create one. And, like, we didn't really think of the repercussions of not doing that fast enough.
Yeah, I saw someone mention on Twitter as well, like they're sick of seeing young quarterbacks go to teams with bad O-lines. It's like Kyler last year, the Cards were a bad O-line. He was running for his life. And eventually, like we had today, they're going to get injured and injured quite seriously. And that's, I guess, the problem when you're a quarterback is you go to a team and a quarterback needy team, and generally speaking, their roster's not great, and that's why they haven't been great. So, yeah, you got to get through that first year or two, hoping that you don't get injured. In Joe Burrow's case, that didn't happen. That's big, man. Like, my biggest repercussion in terms of fantasy is Boyd, Higgins, and your pickup from last week, AJ Green, all take a big hit. It's Boyd, Higgins especially, you could lock in as probably top 24, like wide receiver twos, pushing to like, high-end wide receiver threes every week. That drops. Only one of them is going to be that now. It's unfortunate. That's the repercussion from that injury for me.
It's tough. It's so tough. But like, like when some people come into the league and like they're just different. Like it just got that winning mentality. Like you just know nothing's going to hold him down. I feel like Joe B's got that. Like you just know he's coming back with a vengeance and hopefully with an O-line, because he's going to come back and he just looks like one of those guys that's been in the league a long time and just got a straight ball.
Yep. Absolutely, mate. Once he gets a bit more, like once they build up that O-line and the defense gets a bit more consistent, that's going to be a good team because he's lived up to the number one billing. Like unlike other quarterbacks who have gone number one before, he's, like you said, he's just got that. Don't know what that is, but it's there. Yeah, for sure.
I'm the first to write off quarterbacks as soon as they get in the league. So, and he's just like, trust me, everyone knows that I'm just bust. He's one that I'm so glad I have him in Dynasty because he looks like he could be a super good one long term. The other one that I guess came to the league and everyone was talking about, he might be possibly the one, is Tua. Now, I know that they came out and said that they benched him for performance reasons. Mm-hmm. There was a moment in the game where it looked like he had a high ankle sprain. They took him out for performance reasons, whatever it is. Most people won't know. I think in college, he had both ankles surgically repaired, which often actually helps you not have bad ankle sprains going forward. So monitor it. Don't be too worried. But yeah, just a little bit of information that you might not know is he banged both his ankles in college and had to have them both repaired.
So with that injury, I don't think that affects, I don't think anyone was really playing Tua with, as their regular quarterback. You might have streamed him once or twice. But I think, honestly, if I am, a Parker owner or any of those receivers on the Dolphins team, I'd rather Fitzpatrick out there.
100%.
Personally. So I'm kind of hoping maybe it is, an injury from a fantasy perspective. Of course, not wishing injury on any player, but from a fantasy perspective, if it's Fitz, load those Dolphins receivers up because it's going to be big, especially even Gesicki as well. He becomes, a streamable tight end again.
I think that they can afford to lean on the pass more. I think that's just the way it's going to work. Whereas Tua's more or less a game management. Fitz is just a straight baller. So I think that's where the difference lies. Running back, Salvin Ahmed, tweaked his shoulder. He came back. If you went and blew the budget last week on him in Fab, just monitor it. Gaskin could be back this week. I think he's eligible to come off IR. So, yeah, monitor it and see what the situation with his Gaskin as well. Rex Burkhead tore his ACL. He's just one of these guys that I just can't hate. I think he seems like a super good bloke, does his job, doesn't complain, and just workhorse sort of vet. Just touching on the Gaskin thing, I think Gaskin, Mostert eligible to come back from IR, so both those guys probably suit up this coming week. In terms of guys that might or might not suit up, if you're a Chris Carson owner, get ready to finally fire him up. I think he plays this week. I think they rested him purely because they had that Friday game. If they had a Monday game, I felt like he plays. So get ready to finally fire Carson up. Hopefully he goes back to RB1 status. And other ones is
he's going big if he plays.
I can't wait for them to just straight feed him, because when he was gone, everyone was complaining they got no run game. Hyde came back. Hyde actually low key, not gonna lie, looked so good. But it's when they lean on that run game, that's that classic Seattle guy, and they bring in the RPO. And if you can bring the RPO in and get Metcalf down the field where he's able to double move and like those linebackers and corners bite on the run, they're gonna have some big plays. So if you're a Metcalf and Lockett owner, Chris Carson coming back, you think hurts. I actually think it helps you because I think it opens up the RPO way more.
For sure.
Mixon. Oh, sorry, just touching on the Carson thing. Rashad Penny is eligible to come back. I think they said 2 or 3 more weeks coming back. There could be there's a non-zero chance they just sit him out this whole year if Carson keeps firing. There's also a very high chance that he comes back, and I don't know what his role looks like, but I think they've figured out that they can lean on Carson. And then the other guy, Joe Mixon. Well, if you've picked up Gio Bernard for free off waivers one sneaky day because their practice report said Mixon wasn't practicing, you've been a real happy guy because because Mixon's on IR and I'm not sure he's coming back this year.
No. There's no need. No need to bring him off IR.
Especially now with Joey B's out, just rest his ass, get him back for next year because you've just paid him a big contract. You really don't want that hanging in the offseason. So I think there's a very real possibility. Maybe he comes back for one game, but I also think there's a non-zero chance you need to prepare for the fact that he's not coming back. So if you can even sell him for 25, 30 cents on the dollar, I'd be very much considering it. Wide receiver, Juju, he slipped on a flag or something. I don't know. He's been battling knee things. This one apparently is an ankle. Reports say should be all good to go, maybe a week. Just monitor it. He's been kind of in and out for a while. So Randall Cobb, significant toe injury. They reckon, in my head, that means either turf toe or fracture. Both means 3 to 4 weeks out. So, yeah, probably get ready to drop him if you can. Kenny G, hip. Another one I think that was nearly ready to go this week, but with the whole offense out, they just didn't bother with it. I think he could be ready to go this week, but again, manager's practice reports. If he gets like a limited full in, get ready to fire him up because he's good to go. The last one and the most important one that I didn't really want to have to come to terms with is Julio Jones and his hamstring. Yeah, I don't know. Julio's a battler. His hamstring's been bugging for a while. This is another one that I start wondering, at what point do they look to put him on ice? And does it happen?
So, bro, honestly, it's so hard. So, like, obviously, if people who know me know I'm a Falcons fan, and I'll ride Julio till the day I die. There comes a point, right, where you can't stick up for him in the injury thing anymore because it just becomes like so repetitive. But also, when we're in losing seasons, you can't fight the way he fights when he's injured. Because he tries to come out, and it was such a bad thing, right? He fought to come back out. He makes that huge play, and straight away limps off again. And like, if you're a Falcons, in the head office, you're probably saying, if we don't win our next game, we're at 8 losses already. What's the point? Julio still probably got 2 good years in him. Why are we going to waste half the season in a nothing year for him to come back and possibly do it worse. But I have a question for you, Matt, and this is something that we debate in a lot of leagues that I'm in about Julio, and I always feel like I'm the one who's sticking up for who. Is Julio going to be a Falcon for the rest of his career?
This is tough because I own Julio not just in redraft but in Dynasty as well. When's he actually off contract?
I think we signed that big contract. Was it this offseason or the season before?
And do they trade him and start to rebuild? Is what I guess what the question is.
So the thing is Rid? I guess you can look at it as Ridley a number 1 because that's the question. If you think Ridley's a 1, which I personally don't, I think he's a 1B. And while he's got Julio, he's fantastic. Take away Julio, I don't like the idea of it. But there's also a lot of dead cap situation with who if you trade him. So there's that to weigh out. But I think who's still got 2 or 3 good years. That's just the more the injuries pile up.
I think because of the age of Ryan, I think they're going to ride Julio into the sunset because I think they're going to do the same with Matt Ryan. So I think they're going to start realizing that they're possibly not Super Bowl contenders anymore, and I think they're just going to be content with just letting them have the sunset right off they can. And I completely agree with the Ridley thing. He's another guy I own in Dynasty. I think if you take Julio out of their offense, drawing a lot of that cover, like just more than anyone, the double coverage, the fact that Matt Ryan doesn't even look at Julio in the end zone because he draws double coverage every time, allows Ridley to use his speed and one-on-one coverage to get open. As soon as you take Julio away from that team, I believe Russell Gage becomes a interesting commodity, but I think Ridley becomes a very. I don't think he's a 1. I don't think he's an alpha. I think he's a great 2 that needs someone to draw the heavy defense. And no discredit to Ridley. Ridley, he's a very much a one-trick pony for me in terms of speed guy, gets open in single coverage. So if you can have a guy that draws that coverage off him, awesome talent, because he burns guys one-on-one. But I think if you've got safety help over the top, I think he's going to really struggle with the physicality on the line as soon as they can have the help over the top.
Yep. Agree.
Yeah. I don't know, man, just because Julio's just so physical. So I just don't want to see him gone. I think you're just going to sit with him. Like, he's just given so much to that franchise. But there becomes a point I wanted to say in there was that there becomes a point where the coaching staff need to stop thinking about themselves and save Julio from himself, because Julio will keep going out there every single week. But like, at what point, like, could you just even rest him for a season? Just say, just get right, and we coming back. Like, just put him on ice and get him right, because he keeps having these injury-ridden seasons because he never really actually ever sits down. He just keeps ramping it up. And his off season, I'm not sure he probably has as much time off as a lot of other people do. He just ramps it up so fast.
I think there's definitely that chat probably happening as we speak, or happen today, will happen tomorrow, is that I think at 3-6 and with 7 teams in the wildcard spot, the Falcons thought, at 3-6, we got a 4-6 here, anything could happen. Whereas now we're 3-7, maybe not. Let's chuck some of these boys on ice. And I think it's a real conversation that's happening this week. Scary in a fantasy perspective for someone like yourself who owns him and who got some really good weeks out of him the last couple of weeks. It's a scary thought to lose, a wide receiver 1.
Thank God I got Michael Thomas back this week. And the real Michael Thomas. Anyway, droppable players. So these are guys that we think kind of are droppable. We've been going all week about the same sort of ones. One of them, before you at me, I know one of them was CeeDee Lamb. Again, I never ever said CeeDee Lamb was not a good receiver. I always said the talent was there. I don't think the volume was there. And if you take away his talent, the only reason he got today's score and the scores that he did was through his pure talent. Like, that catch in the end zone was like, that wasn't just a drawn up play. That was like a throw and watch CD just make some ridiculous play. And then also a lot of his plays in the game was like, hit him on like an out route and then just watch him run for 30 yards and burn a defender. So that was the talent. And I know the talent's there, but I think against the harder matchups, they're just going to lock CD down, because like CD is just straight talent. And if you can take him away from that offense, I think it slows down until they bring Tony Pollard up, baby. But don't at me. I'm a Cowboys fan. I just like, I'm excited. He's going to be a generational guy. I just know it.
Yeah, he's going to be good, man. That catch today, that's arguably the catch of the season, the way to contort his body for that touchdown. Oh, baby, that was sexy. That was so sexy.
If you actually take the video back and like, there's a view where you can see the outside of the line, so you can see the offensive line and the catch in the corner from the different sideline, and you can see that the ball was thrown so badly that he actually had to like change from being on the outside to the inside while he was contorting his body. Humorous viewers and listeners, go back and watch the film on an outside view angle, like a bird's eye view, and you can see him running like towards the left-hand post route of the end goal. And then he had to like kind of like right-hand post it around the defender, then locate the ball as he was falling, and then have strong enough hands to not drop the ball when he hit the ground.
Yeah. I've never seen someone purposely like fall to make a catch. I've seen people jump, dive. He like purposely fell to allow his body to twist. It was unbelievable to watch, man. I got up for that. It
was just dead set insane. Like, and it's just like we said, the talent's there. Don't get us wrong. And when Dak's back, I just want us to get rid of Cooper or get rid of Gallup and just let this guy ball and just sign a defense. I don't care. Just get us a defense and watch Dak and CD ball for the next 4 or 5 years, even though I'm not a huge Dak fan. But anyway, he can throw 600 yards a game. So I guess when you're doing that, like, you're just going to get as much money a year as you want. And Jerry Jones will sign him up sometime soon. But, anyway, we're on droppable players. Is there any guys out there you think you could drop?
There are a few, mate. And it's a tough one, tough pill to swallow. I think you can drop every running back in Baltimore, apart from J.K. Dobbins. Like, Ingram is no good now. Gus Edwards is touchdown dependent, and I knew that, and I've started him. 1 week you get away with it, 1 week you don't. So I think if you're starting them, you should probably have someone who is going to get you 5-6 points, as opposed to like the duds that both of them put out. Neither of them got over a point. So I think you can drop both of those guys. And then the likes of like Adrian Peterson, Kerryon Johnson, it's all touchdown dependent for me. So if your team is relying on a player like that, you're probably not in it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But those guys, if I'm in contention, I'm not wanting to play those guys anyway. So there's got to be better options for me out there. So like those are the guys that I'm looking at where they're touchdown dependent. I'm not going to ride my team on a touchdown dependent guy from here. The other point I want to make, and whether you've got something to say on that, is droppable players now takes a bit of a turn for me, like at this point of the season. So week 11, I should now know my starting lineup. There may be one player who rotates with another on my bench based on a matchup maybe. And like, for example, Tyler Boyd was definitely going to be one of my flex players. He probably becomes interchangeable depending on a matchup because he lost Burrow. So the way I look at droppable players, if I'm not playing them in my starting lineup, then I am dropping them for a handcuff situation, especially in the running back, or a quarterback 3 weeks down the line who has a really good matchup. So droppable players probably extends its list for me from now to players who are good players, but they're not going to make my starting lineup, so why hold on to them?
Agreed. And you'll know more than anyone, I'll just drop people. Like I've done the exact same thing. I have a starting lineup minus one flex person. I backed myself. I kind of sold out in terms of getting started talent for a starting lineup, and I backed myself to work the waivers so I could get one relevant flex guy each week. Those then became those handcuffs, and I started watching practice reports and picking up people like Gio Bernard, Adrian Peterson, DJ Dallas, Carlos Hyde. These people that the starters weren't practicing on, say, a Wednesday, and then hoping by Sunday one of them became a starter. And in nearly every single week, I then had a starting running back that actually came to me for free. So, like this week was Carlos Hyde, like 17 points. And it's hard because you've got to work the waivers and you've got to kind of be on the pulse. But if you can get those guys that can fill in for 1 week, like that, you can sell out and get a starting roster, and then kind of just have your bench as a backup. And like as you know, my bench this week was literally 5 handcuffs. Come I think it was Friday, my bench was like Lat Murray, Adrian Peterson, Gio Bernard, I can't even remember the other two, but it was like Carlos Hyde and then someone else. And it was like I was just waiting for one of them just to kind of become the guy, and then Hyde became the starter for a week. Gio Bernard was the starter, Adrian Peterson, and then I sold 2 off and got some fab to try and get back in the fab game. So, and then touching on the matchups down the track, that was why I was saying pick up someone like AJ Green. He wasn't meant to bang this week because he was meant to have Washington, but his roster moving forwards had Joe Burrow was New York Giants, Miami, Dallas, Pittsburgh, and Houston. So I was getting him for the back end, and now I'm going to start considering, do I get rid of him again? And it's tough because I lost Julio, and AJ Green was going to step back into that until the Joey B injury. So agreed. Especially if you're contenders now, you need to start looking at like week 14, 15, 16, lining your guys up. And if you ask anyone in our Div 1 league, I've been hustling to try and get Tom Brady, and I'm going to try and get Lamar Jackson, because if Tom Brady is on your waivers, go pick us straight up, because he's got like Atlanta and like some insane easily schedule. And the fact that he was on waivers for free when one of our guys in our league wouldn't take the handcuff for 4 fabs, like go buy Brady. Oh, it's not. Also, another guy on that route, was Ryan Tannehill. Look forward to him. He's got some nice schedules if you need a streamer for the playoffs. So look at him getting in your bench.
And this is like the beauty of it, Matt, and like you bringing this up, is that this is like a real top tip. Like you're going above being a casual fantasy player now. Like especially this is when you talked about a couple of weeks ago, like how now matchups mean more. You know, the games are more important because players are just around the corner. Your selection on waivers and you looking 3-4 weeks ahead this is what separates you from being, you know, a 5th, 6th seed and getting knocked out in the first round, or, you know, 7th, 8th seed not making the playoffs, to being top 4, getting in that semi-final, giving yourself a chance. Like, go and look, do the research, go and see who's, you know, playing who, because that's going to be the difference at the end of the day. And with the whole handcuff thing, is you don't want to lose, like, for example, like if I was to lose Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is clearly still the RB1, and someone else has Lev Bell, then I'm screwed for the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I drop a Sterling Shepherd on my bench, who's probably not going to play, but I have Lev Bell, and then that injury happens, then I'm safe. So that's the way to go from here on out.
Yeah, actually, that was another one of the guys I had was Lev Bell when CH didn't play because of illness. So yeah, I agree. RB handcuffs are so important because you don't buy the player, you buy the production, and particularly in teams that have a second guy, not like a committee. So like the Rams, right? The Rams or the Ravens, it's a bit awkward because they will use the committee. They've got 3 guys. Whereas when you got someone like say for example New Orleans Saints, if you own Kamara, you better be very sure that when you're dropping Lat Murray, you've got a plan to get him back in your team before they play or before waivers clear. Because if he gets injured in the game, Lat Murray becomes an instant RB1, and like you've just lost your production. And I know it takes up a roster spot. You've got to start looking ahead. Like, do you want to be caught out without an RB1, or do you want to like not have someone like Zach Moss on your bench? Like, these are the differences, and you've got to start like weighing up what you have and what you don't have.
Yeah, and like you said, and when you're picking between the handcuff and the player on your bench, you got to think, okay, is that person on my bench who's probably going to get, I don't know, 4 to 7 points more important than having the guy that could get that, you know, 15 to 20 point game because he becomes the RB1. So you got to weigh that up. You know, what are you more willing to play in your lineup? So yeah, definitely for me, RB's handcuffs, it's the time is now.
I can't wait till next year's drafts because I'm just forecasting that handcuffs are going to go so much earlier because everyone's just going to be so nervous about what happened this year. Like Mike Davis and stuff, they're going to actually be getting drafted because people are just too nervous to not have them. So can't wait for next year's draft because I'm going to start going guys that like I can tell I have a handcuff, but no one else will want. So yeah. Anyway, big yarns, and hopefully some listeners might have had some tips in there. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a whole lot of shit chat from Sam and getting in the way, which is always a positive. Listening to some more serious chat. So, yeah, that brings us to our part of our episode where we get into our waivers. So, who are some guys? Maybe we'll rattle off one each, and then we'll alternate and go to our listers. Who's the first guy, or just one of your 5 guys that you're looking at maybe putting a few sneak stab on?
So again, it comes down to that like idea of handcuff versus 1 week production, and like you'll buy a win at this point of the season. So the one that I'm looking at, and it's the running back play is, and it's so gross. But if P Ryan is injured, and that comes out before Wednesday that he is not playing, I am more than happy to start Gore in my flex because I know he'll get me 8 points, and if he scores a touchdown, you know, 6 to 8 points. 8 is probably a bit generous. 6 to 8, but I know that's a solid 6 points. When my team is, you know, relatively good. That's like a cherry on top, as opposed to playing someone who could get 0, could get 10. Whereas, you know, Frank will give you 6 with the touchdown upside, which he got today. So it's gross, and it makes me sick that I'm even bringing it up. I've played Frank Gore once this year. Didn't think I'd have to do it again. But if P Ryan is injured, I'm going to go and put some money on Gore. It's not a lot.
It's one of those situations where we're like, it's not the talent you're backing the situation of production. Like, you're backing the guy that you know is just their running back. They don't have any other options. Like, just Gase, he'd be down 40 points and he's still going to run the ball 40 times a game. So it's just like, it's one of those ugly plays with just production. And not going to lie, like, I hope that they give it a Gase because this, like, I've just watched, even as a Gore, like I started Gore like a week or 2, and it infuriated me because like I was watching the game supporting Gore, and even I was like, oh my God, P Ryan actually looks half decent. Could you imagine if they just flipped the book and just gave him the work? Because like there must be something that's like they can tell he's not going to take the workload of it because he actually looks half decent.
Yep. I don't know what it is, Matt, but yeah, it's gross. But yeah,
they're going to trade him, and he's going to be one of the other guys that like leaves Adam Gase's just dungeon and becomes a stud. So Yeah, I know. I'm the same boat. If Pirine doesn't play, he's a guy from struggling. If say Julio Jones got hurt in your team and you need a fixed guy, then maybe you're looking at playing him. Yeah, that's just it. Yeah. If Pirine
Yeah,
plays though, I don't think either of them are like confidently startable. I think the day that Pirine becomes the guy there for maybe even a week, he becomes a flex guy. But until then, like they just split this right down the middle. It's just so yuck.
I think we've already spent too much time talking about Jets running backs.
Well, okay. Well, speaking of Jets players, I was going to go on to a Jets receiver then, and Pyramid. Um,
Yep.
It's like Crowder's the guy there because he gets the volume. But some of these matchups are nice that if you're struggling for players, much like Tim Patrick was suggested like last week and the week before, Pyramid has like Miami, Vegas, Seattle. Some of those I guess the Miami defense is supposedly good, but they don't cover wide. Like you just saw Tim Patrick win and go bang for 120 yards. I think there's very much like they can cover one guy, but they don't have it across the field. So someone like Perryman could become kind of relevant because like those games against Vegas and definitely Seattle, they're going to be chasing points and they're going to be throwing that ball and someone's going to catch the ball. Well, I guess it's a chit, so no one has to catch the ball, but so he's going to get looks his way and he might get some high-value targets because they don't really trust the running game. And Crowder can only do so much. You can't pepper him 40 times a game. You can only do it 10, 15. So, yeah, he's just a sneaky possible ad. And if you're battling for players and all you guys get hurt, I could justify starting him as like an honorable win.
Yep. And I'm going to roll on that matchup of the Jets and Raiders and go Nelson Aguilar. He is a huge opportunity guy at the moment, and he's been on and off like consistency. He has a big week, low week, big week, low week. So he always probably burnt the week you play him. But he's got a run of Atlanta and then the Jets. And Derek Carr is feeding him more and more, and he's definitely the deep shot guy at the moment, and I think the upside there in the next 2 weeks, especially against Atlanta and especially against the Jets, is huge. Bad run for the playoffs, but if that's the difference between 2 wins and 1 win, like Aguilar for me I'd probably be willing to spend 5 or 6 fab just to plug him into my lineup.
Agreed. He was on my list as well. Aguilar is like the premium example of if you could watch the first 3 minutes of an NFL game and then decide who you're going to play or not, he would be the guy for it because he is so a confidence guy. It's like ridiculous. Like at Philly, couldn't catch a cold, and just like it was like people wanted to just burn his house down because he just couldn't catch anything and he was costing them games. He went to Vegas and like game 1 and 2 and 3 and like he just wouldn't drop a ball. So it was riding high in the confidence, and then he had a few drops which kind of had me worried because of how confident he was. But like he's the deep shot guy, and it's weird like that Vegas are kind of putting up enough fantasy volume to support a run game and a passing game at the moment. So I agree. Aguilar was on my list because he's now done it enough that like you can start looking at entering into the conversation of actually backing him because I think he's like wide receiver 38 or not. And like I know people out here like holding wide receiver 64. So yeah.
Yeah, which is, real quickly, go back to droppable players. A guy who's similar to that is Marquise Brown. Get rid of him, drop him. I know we've talked about it before. I, for one, didn't listen the first time, and now it's time. Get rid of him.
So,
but,
okay, yeah, you go.
No, you go. No.
So I was going to ask then, Landry. Is he droppable? Because he's now like had like 5, 6, 7 weeks. And I know there's probably no one I should pick it up. But are you picking up Nelson Aguilar or are you keeping Jarvis Landry? Because we've known now all year that the only way Cleveland Browns win is through the ground. And we keep saying, but one guy can be supported. And they really can't. Like, it's just showing this run, and then run again. So you holding Landry?
I'm just having a look at Landry's upcoming schedule, and honestly, I'm looking at his previous games. I don't have any shares of Landry. I never wanted him in the draft, and so I don't trade for him. He's just not a guy on my list, so I don't really know a lot. I don't follow him that much. And looking at his game scores, it's not great yet. I'd take Aguilar the next 2 weeks. He's got Philly, and then he gets Jacksonville, Tennessee, who have been giving up points to the wide receivers. But I think Aguilar, he's still had the drops today. He scored 14
Yep.
points. He could have had a 20 burger easily. And it's like he just dropped some really simple catches. And you're just like, come on, man. But I would probably rather Aguilar. He's getting the better opportunity. The run game heavy in Cleveland, like you said. And what do they do after the run game? They play action it. And who is most involved in that? The tight ends. So
Yeah.
I'd rather Aguilar over Landry, especially the next 2 weeks.
Speaking of tight ends,
Who would have
I
said
don't know
that?
whether like, man, I know, like, and I've said it every podcast. If Hooper lets you down, just pure degenerate finish, just double down again, and then just next week I'm going to be quadrupling doubling down because he only got me 5 points. So, yeah, I back until it hurts, and I'm just going to keep backing him because eventually he's going to pay me out, hopefully.
He should have had a tutty today, bro. Baker
Yeah,
just
oh my
whiffed.
God, don't bring up that pass. That was so bad. It
horrible.
infuriated me.
Yeah.
Anyway, my next guy is a guy I think I've picked him up and dropped him about 8 times in the last 2 weeks. And then I finally dropped him and then he goes and bangs. And that's Robert Tonyan. The one reason I like this guy is because if you're in the fantasy leagues, he's actually eligible as a tight end. And in a 0.5 tight end premium league, you can play him at wide receiver or flex, depending on your needs. And I think you're going to get the 0.5 points per reception, which actually could be a difference only, from my opinion, for guys that can register as tight end and as wide receivers. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I trust him. I don't know if I trust him. I don't trust any tight ends apart from Travis Kelce anyway. But
yeah, that's the thing is if you don't have one of the big 5 or 4, whatever, however you want to slice it, I mean, do you really trust them? You're just putting them in and hoping for the best, really, aren't you?
yeah, just hoping Michael Thomas gives me enough points so I don't have to care about tight end. Do you have another guy?
I do. It's probably crossing over into our streams of the week. But if I'm talking up Nelson Aguilar, I'm talking up Derek Carr. How good is he looking at the moment? He's playing some great footy. And again, going back to the matchup, he gets the Falcons and then he gets the Jets. And that's, the next 2 weeks, the quarterback position can win you games. And I think he's in for a big game against Atlanta, definitely next week. But he's been doing it against good defenses too. He's probably been a great waiver wire pickup 2-3 weeks ago. But he's definitely one that I've got on my radar. If my quarterback's been slipping, I'd probably rather play him over Lamar Jackson at the moment. And that's how bold it is. And how bullish I am on Derek Carr at the moment is because Lamar isn't looking great. And I know Derek Carr is thriving in the offense at the moment. So he's definitely looking at available in our league specifically. He's the quarterback that I'd pick up off waivers this week.
Okay, I have a question for you then, and it's quite a funny one because it's exactly the situation I'm in. So with Deshaun Watson right now, he banged, and we all know what he is because he can pass and he can throw, and he seems kind of sometimes matchup proof. Coming into the playoffs, he's got, I think it's Indy, Chicago, Indy in week 13, 14, 15.
Ooh,
now Lamar
tough.
Jackson has some very nice matchups of Cincy, Dallas. And Deshaun Watson the week coming up has Detroit. Now, going forward to rest of schedule, who do you want in that situation?
Oh, that's tough. Okay, that's really tough. So Lamar did kind of find his throwing feet today, didn't he? Not really, even though he only had the one tutty. Saw pick. I must have just seen that nice highlight of the ball to Mark Andrews. Okay, so give me a sec here. So I'm looking. He's got Pitts, Dallas, Cleveland. To me, at the end of the day, Cleveland Jags. That's tough. I will go for Deshaun. The only reason I'll go for Deshaun is I trust him more to have the big passing day. Yeah. Lamar's not going to have that. He's going to have the rushing, and but Deshaun can also do what Lamar's been doing on his feet as well. And the reason I say I'd rather go Deshaun is I look at the matchups, right? I look at Detroit. That is likely to be. I say it's like to be a shootout, and Detroit scored 0 points today. But more than likely, if both defenses have been struggling, so I think shootout. Indeed, that's a tough matchup. That's week 13. If you need your win to get into week 13, you can stream that week. But then, you get Indy again, and you get Cincinnati, Chicago. I'd rather play Deshaun in those games as opposed to Lamar. I just don't trust Lamar's passing, and so I'll back Deshaun. Deshaun's done.
I know it's super interesting. The reason I asked him, and Sam highlighted to me today And normally I don't listen to Sam because, as you guys would know, he's a bit of a loose unit. But one of the ones he said was those defenses, everyone sees those defenses and freaks out, particularly against quarterbacks. Those defenses are good against the run. Like they shut down the run, and like Chicago have some all right corners, but Indy has some good linebackers, but Deshaun can have those big pass yard games, but also can escape the pocket super fast. So I think it can kind of be overstated and construed that like good defenses mean quarterback struggle and wide receiver struggles. Like, for example, you get teams that are awesome against the run and suck through the air. One screams in mine is last year and the last 5 years of Tampa, right? Like awesome against the run, but you started every single receiver against them every single week. So please note that, like, when you guys do trades, just be aware that, like, you just got to tread lightly and take it with a grain of salt, that, like, different aspects create good defenses.
So, like, and on this topic, like, would you say Deshaun's probably had a down year, like, playing-wise, from what we expect of him?
No, because I'm not sure he's, like, had the same opportunities as what he probably could have had. Like, if they had a run game and D-Hop there, I don't think he struggles this year. I just think that they've, like, had such less talent this year.
Yeah, so not a dig at Deshaun. I still love Deshaun the player. More so, like, just production-wise. Do you think he's had a down year production-wise to what we expected? Maybe after his previous years.
I think his highs have been higher. Yeah. I think his lows have been lower, if that makes sense. Some of the weeks, like, against, like, he's, like, bang 30, and he hasn't had the rushing touchdowns as he has in previous years.
So that's it, and I think that's going to come. I think it. The other thing I've noticed, they haven't been, it seemed like all of last year they were in really tight games where he always had the ball in the last 2 minutes, and he was, always scoring a touchdown in the last second. But he's still quarterback 7. Like, like, to me, Deshaun hasn't played the way we know Deshaun can play, but that's also got to do with his talent. Yeah. But he's still quarterback 7, so I'd ride that because his floor is so safe. What you don't want from the quarterback position is the guy who puts up 6 points at your quarterback position, because the moment that happens, you've pretty much lost the week. Yep. It's like the same reason, like if you do, you start Lamar and you start, because you're probably going to get that solid floor. But Deshaun's floor is probably one of the safest, probably along with Kyler's. They're not going to give you that dud. So you can bank that.
For me, quarterback, right? So QB Superflex leagues, and those that do, like, the mystery leagues, you'll know what Superflex leagues are. Mm-hmm. You start 2 tight ends, or 2 quarterbacks, and quarterbacks become ever so important. For me, in redraft single quarterback leagues, quarterbacks are by far the most underrated position in the whole league. And it's because, like Deshaun's hitting his floor right now. His floor for me is QB7, right? Like, the numbers he's putting on right now for me is his floor and not his ceiling. So I do have one set of shares of him in redraft, and, like, for example, if he puts up, so you keep playing, people keep playing quarterbacks with, like, a ceiling of 25 points and, like, a floor of, like, 10, right? If you get a quarterback that puts 10 points up and a wide receiver that has an awesome day and puts up 16 points, that's 26 points on 2 positions. If you get a quarterback that puts up 31 points, you are now one whole position ahead and 5 points. And that's why it's so underrated. It's like, people undervalue the ceiling of good quarterbacks being able to carry teams. Like, if everyone had it last year, like, with Lamar Jackson and Patty Mahomes putting up 40 points, it was so understated. Like, he could put up 40 points, and if you had a running back and a wide receiver that you started, you're getting 60 points there alone, no matter how bad they were.
Yeah, I think the problem is, right, so when you're a newbie to fantasy, you get fed the don't draft quarterbacks early mantra, right? And that it kind of gets overplayed. And it's a fair point, and the strategy behind it is 100% right, because what you're giving up in the wide receiver running back position to take a QB1, 2, or 3 is too much for then you to pick a wide receiver 2, 3, 4. So the theory and the research is right, but there comes a time. So, like, I will never draft the first, second, third, fourth quarterback off the board, because the value just doesn't reflect that. But come 5, 6, 7, 8, and knowing who that quarterback is, that is probably going to be a top 5, and he's projected to be out of that at the moment, that's the difference. And I'm so big on that, bro. And that was like when Kyler dropped down to the 7th, I knew he had that rushing floor, and you just know he rushes for like 80 yards that's 8 points. That's like a good flex position on his rushing alone. And then you add his passing on top of that. And so like you said, you've got players like that double up. They give you that much value. And like, for example, the one this year would be Justin Herbert. Like his games have been unreal. And he's just carrying teams to victories over the last. He's going to be a league winner if he keeps doing what he's doing, because you didn't see it coming. You didn't have to spend that value, and now he's 2 or 3 players in one. So, 100%
Agreed.
growth.
Like those quarterbacks with that ceiling that also have a floor is just. I don't draft quarterbacks early, and I took Deshaun Watson like the 5th or 6th this year, and I took him over Dak and Kyler, and it was more because I knew he was going to have the huge passing games, but I believed he still had the rushing upside. And I just looked at the numbers, and in previous years he's had 7 rushing touchdowns. He's only had 1 so far this year. So that has been the difference so far this year, and that's like another 24, 25 points, and that's like 5 points over 5 weeks. So that is a bit of a difference, but yeah, I also agree quarterbacks are kind of understated. Bringing it back into our streamers, you did touch on streamers there. Who would be your QB streamer of the week, possibly, if you can pick them up?
So it's 100% Derek Carr, like without a shadow of a doubt. Derek Carr, he's got Atlanta. He's playing well. His offense is rolling. Fire him up.
Yep. He's a good one. Other one I was looking at is possibly if Cam Newton's still on your waivers. Some people have dropped him recently. So goes up against Arizona. And I want to say Matthew Stafford so bad, but I just don't trust his hand.
Can't trust him.
So yeah. I'm fine with Derek Carr, and if Cam Newton's there, then maybe back him up.
Yep.
And yeah, those would be my 2 going up against Atlanta. You just start everyone. Another smoky one is one we touched on last week is Kirk Cousins goes up into Carolina. He's one that doesn't have the ceiling of possibly Cam Newton and maybe Derek Carr, but when he gets going, he can have some big games. Like I think he's one of those ones that it's just his bad is very bad. So you've got to worry about that. If you're in the unfortunate position, we have to maybe sort of find a running back to chuck in a flex or RB2. Who you looking at?
It's gross, but one that I'm probably, if I'm stuck in that position, I've got 2. James White, considering the Rex Burkhead injury, that opens up snaps, and they got James White a little bit more involved today. He's a potential, if you need it, he could go off. The other one is Devontae Booker for the Las Vegas Raiders. They are very, very keen on getting him involved in the game. They give him whole series, whole drives. So he could be another guy that you could shove in the flex. It's not great. It's not sexy. The waivers are terrible at the moment for running backs, but those are 2 guys that you could look at if you're desperate.
Yep. I don't mind those ones. And one you touched on earlier was also Frank Gore, especially if Pirine sits, and then you fire him up. One ugly one, and don't at me if this goes tits up, because there's a very, very high chance it goes tits up. But Boston Scott. So I am not one for starting backup handcuff running backs. I would just rather start anyone else. But they're going to be chasing points all game against Seattle this week, and I seem to find that Boston Scott seems to keep having these banger games out of nowhere, particularly in games where going up against bad defenses, and I can just see him pulling up some 30-yard TD out of nowhere against a team like Seattle, because I think there could be more than enough points and opportunities where he might just he's going to have some sort of breakaway play and a touchdown to get there, and his floor is absolutely nothing. But I feel like if you're really, really, really battling, he could be one that might find you a weird sort of like an MVS sort of take a punt a few weeks ago, because he can rip those big plays off. And while I'm also the biggest anti-Carson Wentz fan club president person, Boston Scott might rip off some sort of pass catch where he goes to 30 yards in a TD. I could just kind of see that happening.
Yeah, I'm staying away from the Eagles, but your reasoning I can't disagree with.
Wide receiver.
Now, this is a little bit more open. Obviously, we've touched on a few, but I'm firing up a guy like Hunter Renfrow next week. Slot corners for Atlanta. Well, corners in general.
There's a whole defense.
This is a defense, but I think a guy like Hunter Renfrow is going to have a big game. So, fire up your Las Vegas Raiders, because most of them will be on the waiver wire. the wide receivers. So I'd be looking at Renfro and Aguilar. But also KJ Hamler, I'm liking what I'm seeing out of him. Great receiver. And in another league, I said at the start of the year that Cortland Sutton will be the wide receiver 3 by the end of next year on that team. And I know it's been an injury, but Hamler and Judy are definitely the guys. And I'm just not a Sutton guy. And I think Hamler's looking good. So I'd be happy to stream him this week too.
Yeah, I'm not a Sutton guy either, but I got a deal in Dynasty that was too good to refuse, and I tried moving him straight away because I just had zero confidence. Like the plays that he is ripping off, I was like, I don't trust you to rip those off again. So, agreed. I don't really want anyone in that offense, to be honest, perfectly honest. But yeah, I'm trying to get rid of my Sutton shares because I don't trust him. So, yeah, in terms of flex, I think there's I was gonna say Henry Ruggs purely out of he can't be this bad for this long. So, but also the one game banger that he had 2 catches over 120 yards. So the realistic nature of that happening again isn't high. But as you mentioned, the same reasoning about Atlanta's defense sucks. I feel they could fire them up. Another smoky one.
I'll say one, Maddie. Just I don't know. I hope I don't steal it from you. Oh, you go, and then if you don't say it,
you're not going to steal it off me. There's no way you're going to get the guy that I was going to.
You go. Hit me with a smoke then.
Monitor practice reports of Julian Edelman. He was designated comeback from IR this week, and he hasn't been practicing. He hasn't been designated off IR, but there's been hints that he might be practicing on Wednesday. If he then becomes practicing, I just know so many people dropped him because he wasn't even producing anyway. But I think Cam Newton's kind of found his arm there. If he does get designated off IR, they go up against Arizona. Maybe if you're really battling, I can see someone like Edelman getting peppered for targets. He kind of had 1 or 2 good weeks, and that was about it. I know he's a tough bugger, but just monitor practice reports. If you're really struggling, he might come off IR and he might be a smoky.
You have found my intrigue button, mate, and definitely pressed it. That is nice. I like that. I like that a lot. He's someone that's completely slipped off the radar, obviously not playing. Mm-hmm. But like you said, Cam is starting to find a little bit, and Jules is a very good receiver. That's naughty. That's real naughty. The one I was going to say, bro, was that we talked about Julio being injured, firing up a Russell Gage this week, or even a Olamide Zacchaeus, one of those receivers, because the production's going to come there. Matt Ryan's still going to throw for close to 300 yards, and then they're all going to go to Ridley and Hurst. So one of those guys, you just got to get lucky on who it is.
Agreed. I was a huge Russell Gage fan, especially when Julio Ridley missed time, and then that Zacchaeus dude came out of nowhere, and it just made me a bit nervous because I didn't know who the true 3 there normally was, who then would become the 2. And Zacchaeus was pulling off these ridiculously long, MVS vibe sort of TDs. So yeah, I'm a big Gage fan, but he just wasn't seeing enough of the target share and snap share that I was wanting. So if he can get that snap share, fire him up because he's another smoky that I do like.
So just checking his stats from today, mate, he had 80% of the snaps today. So yeah, if that carries on as next week, he'd be the clear number 2.
Yeah,
if
I don't mind that at all because Zacchaeus, whatever his name is, only had 22%. But that also happened, I'm pretty sure, last time someone got hurt during the game, which Gage came in, but then when they had chance to then scout the next game, Zacchaeus became a big part. And I know it was because if he just made these banger plays or that was part of the game script, but he became part of the game. I don't know if that was just because Gage is easier to put in out of nowhere or yeah, but again, I do like those 2 guys. And I don't really want to ask about them because no one cares because no one can ever hit one. But tight end.
Yeah, I won't spend too long on it, bro, but there's 2, and it's touchdown dependent. Mike Gesicki, if Fitz is in, I would probably fire up Gesicki, or Dalton Schultz. Those are my 2. It's gross, though. It's so gross.
Yeah, it's so gross. If Tonyan's on your waivers, maybe pick up Tonyan. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. They all suck.
Best of luck.
The only reason that a Travis Kelce owner will not win this league is if somehow they verse the Patriots and someone just triple teams them. It's just the top and the rest is just so even Jonnu Smith missed a week or 2 and he gets 12 yards in a TD and he's tight end 2. So Yeah, it seems this year like it's just been such a crapshoot. But if you have Austin Hooper, back him till it hurts. Eventually I'll be right, and we'll get one, and we'll celebrate.
Love it.
Anything else before we sign out?
Nah, mate, that'll do it. But just at this point in the time, if you have a guy that you want, don't be afraid to spend the fab. You can't take fab with you into next season, so start spending it if you've been saving it.
Just don't spend it on the guys I want to spend it on. Anyway, see you later. We'll see you hopefully our next podcast. Sam clicked on too many porn links and gave himself a virus and wasn't able to get his laptop fixed and edit. So I've settled him down, but I've told him he can't do that again. So our next ep should be up Friday, giving you the weekend to then watch it or not watch it. I'm not really fussed. If you have made it to the end of this, thank you, and hopefully we'll see you on Friday.